All right, so I'm looking at daily lesson 13, talking about the interquartile range. We're calculating the interquartile, which sounds kind of like a spaceship or something, interquartile range of a data set, and it just represents a different center of the data. In some ways, it represents a larger center of the data, so it's kind of weird. So if we look here, so far this is the data of like the number of times students went to Elitch's last summer. And if you look, it's pretty spread out. It's hard to tell if you asked a student when they went, how many times they would go. It says that the mean is 9.5, but it's hard to say, oh, most of the time students went this many times to the park. That's tough to say because it is so variable. It is so spread out. So we have this thing called the interquartile range. It represents the two quartiles of the data, or the middle 50%. And so how do you do this? We're going to find quartile 1, quartile 3, not quartile 2. Quartile 2 is actually the median. And then we're just going to subtract them, and that will give us the interquartile range. So here's how we do this. I'm going to start by getting my data put in order as usual. So I have 1, 1, 3, 4, 6, 6, 7, 8. And then I have 10, 2 11s, a 12, 2 15s, and 3 17s. And if I work my way to the middle on this data, it's an odd number, which is nice. So I'm going to end up at 10. This is known as our median, but it's also known as quartile 2. We can think a quartile is split up into 4 parts. So then I can also find quartile 1. How do I do that? I do the same thing. It's just like a lower median. So I go down, 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 and I end up exactly between 4 and 6, which would be 5. This is known as quartile 1. And I do the same thing up here. I have go in, go in, go in, and here is quartile 2. And what's between 15 and 15 but 15? So this is quartile 3. So I have quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and then quartile 4 is at the very, very end. So again, this is 25%, or 1/4 of our data. This is 25%, or 1/4 of our data, but it's one of the middle ones. This is 25%, or 1/4 of our data. And then finally, this little bit up here, this is the top part. This is the last 25%. This is the last 1/4 of our data. So the interquartile range is just this. The interquartile range is this area right here. So think about why that can be better than the mean. The mean and the median tell you the middle. The interquartile range tell you the middle 50%. So it's a bigger range. So how do I find the interquartile range? I subtract. I take quartile 3 minus quartile 1. That will tell me the interquartile range. And then I can kind of make a weird statement. So quartile 3 is 15. Quartile 1 is 5. That tells me my interquartile range is 10. All that means is that 50% of students, about 50% of students went to Elitch's between 5 and 15 times. And all of that helped us to find it. So if we recap this again, it's kind of like finding the median, but instead you find a lower median and an upper median. So that's how we found those. Go back and rewatch that one if it was kind of confusing how to find those interquartile ranges.